Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. It's part of the 2023 Wayne Public Library Virtual Jazz Series. I had a great honor and pleasure to be conversing with and interviewing our wonderful guest tonight, pianist Leonieke Scheuble. Thank you very much, and thanks for joining me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
We had such a wonderful time yesterday. She had played as part of our Lunchbox Learning program that was incredibly well received, and it was fantastic being part of the audience. So I very much enjoyed that. For those of you who aren't familiar with Leonieke, she is a brilliant young jazz pianist from Rockaway, New Jersey. And one of the articles I found gives a quote that she embodies the best qualities of a multitude of predecessors. And I totally hear that in her music and agree with that sentiment. So one of the amazing things is her age and her youth, and having started so early, and not to put a fine point on it, but you started, I believe, at age 5 or 6, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So I believe you were watching the movie Ray, and about Ray Charles, and that was the beginning of this great love of keyboards.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, my parents used to always have the movie Ray on the TV, and I became a little bit obsessed with it. I just love the music in that movie, and I would ask them to play it over and over again. And according to my dad, one day I just went to the piano and started playing. And he would kind of coach me a little bit with different ideas. Like he would say, play me the sound of snow melting, or play me the sound of the sun rising, different things that don't necessarily have a sound to them. And I think that really helped me with improvisation and learning the music and digesting it in a different way. And to this day, I still love Ray Charles.
It's an amazing way to introduce someone to composition and improvisation. And I'm just trying to envision that beauty of how snow melts, and it's incredible. I really like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I had seen that I had read that you had recorded a couple of your own compositions at that young age, at 7, right?
Yeah, somewhere around, I guess between 5 and 7. When I turned 7 or close to being 7, my dad had me begin studying with a teacher named Steve Ash, who I still study with to this day. And up until college, he was really my only teacher. And it's interesting because my dad, he was he studied classical piano, and now he's a jazz drummer. He went to William Patterson, where I am now, and he switched to being a jazz drummer, but he plays piano and knows theory and knows everything about that. So between 5 and 7, he was kind of coaching me a little bit. He taught me Hit the Road Jack and different things, and he recorded some of my compositions that I was messing around with at the time. And yeah, around 7 with Mr. Ash, the lessons have always been very unorthodox. Because I came to music by ear and by listening, I used to listen all the time, all night long. I'm a night person, so I would just listen from, I don't know, midnight to 3 a.m., just really focusing on the music. And so the lessons were unorthodox. He has 2 pianos in his house, and I would come to him with tunes that I really liked, and I'd play for him, and he would give me ideas, or he would do different ear training things. But I was never, I haven't gone through any method books or any type of structured training in a way. I learned scales and theory by doing it, and of course being coached along the way. But even to this day, it's still very unorthodox, and a big emphasis on using my ear and playing by ear.
So unorthodox, but unconventional and organic, really. I mean, you've learned to hone your talent rather, truly organically, and that's something that's not that not everyone has a chance to come across, and that's wonderful that yours was fostered.
Yeah, and going into college, I actually found it kind of difficult because there were so many gaps that even to this day I'm still trying to fill in. Uh, a lot of people go through music in a very structured way, like you said. So I'm still in the process of filling in those gaps and kind of playing catch up a little bit. But I still listen to music all day long as much as possible and try to digest it that way still.
What are the other types of music that you like to listen to that might also influence your jazz playing? Is it classical? Is it rock or whatever? What do you enjoy listening to?
Yeah, so growing up, music was always in the house, with, of course, my dad being a musician. And my mom isn't a musician. She's like a mechanical engineer. She works in the medical field, but she loves music, loves Eric Dolphy and different Thelonious Monk, different people like that. Uh, but I also grew up listening to James Brown, Aretha Franklin, uh, Jimi Hendrix was in the house. Uh, Prokofiev, going into classical music. And so all those different styles really influenced me. And also, I love Latin jazz. I listen to a lot of Latin music, a lot of traditional Cuban music, like the Buena Vista Social Club and Tito Puente and Mongo Santa Maria and all these different things. So I think some of that Latin playing, because I also love playing Latin music and listening to Brazilian jazz as well. I think that influenced my playing quite a bit. And for the blues and rhythm, I think listening to James Brown and Ray Charles and different people like that also made it into my playing as well.
You mentioned with classical with Prokofiev. One of the things I've always noticed is when I listen to pianists like Monty Alexander or Larry Fuller, who we were just chatting about, I hear a lot of Debussy in their playing. And even if you look at Duke Ellington with Reflections in D, there's just such beauty and it's an amalgamation of classical and jazz and such a wonderful composition and such. So I can see how you can channel that. And excuse me, I also like the Latin jazz a lot and the Brazilian especially and Joe Beam. And one of the things I was very happy to see is you played yesterday as well as in William Patterson concert a lesser known Joe Beam piece called Favela.
Mhm.
What made you choose that one?
That's a good question, actually. So, just within the past few recent years, I believe beginning during the pandemic, but maybe even a few years before that, I started getting into Brazilian jazz, and I love listening to Claudio Roditi, who unfortunately passed away recently. But my dad got to perform with him, and when my dad was learning his repertoire, I heard, Claudio Roditi's records, and he did tunes like A Felicidade and Favela and different things like that. Although Brazilian jazz was also in the house too, so I got a taste of that when I was younger as well. Uh, but there's something about Favela that I just truly love, and I love playing on it. I love listening to it, and all of his pieces are really fantastic. And actually, some of them do borrow from classical uh, melodies or classical chord progressions. Sometimes his forms are a little bit different than the standard jazz forms, but they're so intelligent and they make sense and they sound great and they reach everybody, whether you're a jazz musician or just a regular listener or anything. So I really love his compositions.
It's a really good point that you make there too, is that it is the music reaches everybody, and that's a beauty of jazz, I think. That of all the different genres, to me, it's the one that's most accessible to a lot of more listeners. I know, I don't know if that's others would agree with me, but I think that may be a case.
Yeah, and I think not, well, how should I say this? I think more with jazz than other genres, but other genres as well. There's no discrimination. Like, there's no age discrimination. Sometimes I play with this bassist who just turned 95 and I'm 21. So there's no age discrimination. You can have somebody that's 5 playing with somebody 95, um, and there's no discrimination of gender, race, beliefs, anything. It's just connecting musically. And I think even diplomatically, I mean, if you get musicians from other countries to play with you, you're communicating not with words, but with music. And it's a whole different level. I think it's incredible.
I totally agree with you, and I think that that also was seen with the jazz messengers, and they became the jazz ambassadors, right? And traveled the world and brought together this love of music, and it's an incredible thing, and luckily it still exists. So you're now carrying the torch, and it's wonderful to see that.
Thank you.
You've had some interesting influences from your very young childhood. I saw the vocalist Antoinette Montague was one, and then two jazz organists, which we'll now um, let the viewers see that you were playing keyboards, acoustic keyboards, but also organ, a Hammond organ, and that it was two people played a pivotal role in that. One was Joey DiFrancesco, who we sadly lost last August, and the other was Dr. Lonnie Smith, who played with George Benson, who gifted you the Hammond organ. Can you tell me a little bit about these mentors to you?
Yeah. So I believe I met Antoinette Montague first. I met her at the International Women in Jazz competition, and she has been such a big mentor for me because being a woman in jazz, it's always important to have women mentors with you. And she has taught me so much about presence and carrying yourself, and she's a great blues singer too. I love listening to her and playing with her. But she just teaches so many great life lessons. And actually, indirectly, another woman who influenced me very much was Ernestine Anderson, who I heard a lot growing up. And I think when I was about 7 or 8, I went to Dizzy's Club Coca-Cola with my parents to hear her live. And again, the way that she carried herself influenced me so much. And it was funny because I was very small and it was a school night and we were there late. It was like 10 o'clock at night, maybe, like the start of the set, 9:30. And she saw me sitting there and was asking me what I wanted to hear her sing. And then I got to go backstage and meet her. And for some reason, that just is one of the best moments that I recall. And so anyway, actually at Dizzy Club Coca-Cola, um, now I think when I was about 10, my dad and I went to see Joey DiFrancesco perform. And he was playing the Hammond organ, just incredible. And during the break, my dad approached him and told him that I play piano. And one thing that I do want to mention is that with my teacher, Steve Ash, one of the first things that he started me on was playing boogie woogie and walking bass lines. And so that kind of caused my left hand to be strong. And so my dad was talking to Joey DiFrancesco and asking him, just different advice for me. And Joey DiFrancesco said, well, it's during the break. Come check out the organ and look at it if you want. So I sat down and I'm just looking at it because I had never seen a Hammond organ before. And he's watching me look at it. And then he's like, well, play something. So I remember I played Au Valve, which is a Charlie Parker tune, and I was walking the bass lines. And for some reason, it just felt so natural to me to just do that, like playing on the upper register. And so then he recommended a keyboard that he was working on called the Numa. And he said if it's a single keyboard, but you can attach another keyboard to it if you want. And it's an organ keyboard. So that Christmas, my parents bought me the Numa. And I messed around with it a little bit, but I had no idea what I was doing. So I didn't really gravitate towards it that much. Um, and so when I was, I think 11 at this point, my parents used to live in the Netherlands before I was born. because of my mom's job working overseas. And they moved back and forth, like 6 months here, 6 months there. And then after I was born, they did the same thing. So, and that's how I got my name, Leonieke, even though we're not Dutch. And Leonieke is actually a jazz pianist. The person I'm named after, Leonieke Vermeer, is a jazz pianist. So anyway, when I was 11, we went back to the Netherlands to visit some of our old friends. And the Groningen Jazz Festival, which was where we used to live, was having Dr. Lonnie Smith perform. And so we were having lunch with some friends, some Dutch friends, and they're musicians as well. So we all decided to go to this festival. And it was great. We listened to Dr. Lonnie Smith. It was with, I believe, the Concertgebouw Orchestra, one of the Dutch orchestras. And the friend that we have, Didi, he knew the conductor. So he said, maybe we can go backstage and meet the conductor and just say hello. So we all go backstage and we're seeing the conductor, and in front of me is Dr. Lonnie Smith. And he was very tall and he looked kind of like a guru in a way. He had a long beard. And I just remember like looking up at him because I was pretty small. And so similar, my dad was talking to him about me playing piano, and he showed him a clip on YouTube of me just playing a tune. I don't remember what tune. And Dr. Lonnie Smith was offering, do you want anything to drink? Do you want an apple? Do you want anything? And after playing the clip, he said, "You've been here before, and would you play the organ if I gave you one?" And to me, I didn't really believe what that was. Of course, I said yes, but I didn't think, much of that question. And he gave my dad a whole bunch of information, and we got back to the States. And then 2 guys from Rhode Island delivered Dr. Lonnie Smith's A100 Hammond organ. And it really changed my life. Of course, I still have it at home, and I play now Hammond organ. And I'm not really sure if I would have continued because I love Joey DeFrancesco's playing, and I just think that there's nothing like a real instrument, if that makes sense. And the 2 of them together have stayed in touch all these years and mentored me. Dr. Lonnie Smith, we would call periodically and speak to him over the phone. And he would give me different life advice and different things to listen to and just kind of talk to me. And Joey DeFrancesco let me sit in once at Birdland, and that was kind of a crazy story too. But yeah, it's strange that they both passed away recently, but they have really changed my life forever.
It's interesting that the musicians are able very quickly to see that you possess an old soul, that you truly have been around for a very long time. And I believe, aside from Dr. Lonnie Smith, Barry Harris also recognized this in you. And I saw in an interview that you gave that he had 4 words, which were "Let her be free." And you have gone free, and you've gone into incredible heights here, which I think is wonderful. Would you like to share your story about Joey DeFrancesco?
Sure, yeah. So I remember it was in January, and the complicated thing about that story is that I have very bad asthma that has been getting better, but at the time, it was very bad, and I had gotten sick. So I was in the hospital, the ICU, for 9 days, and I was released and trying to get better. And my dad had a gig, so my mom and I really wanted to see Joey DeFrancesco at Birdland, but I had been very weak at the time, and it was in January. There was a snowstorm. It was right in time for the Super Bowl. So we booked a hotel as close to the jazz club as possible so that we could walk over and then walk back without any problems. And he sounded incredible, as always. And he asked my mom if I would be up to sitting in. And I hadn't practiced because of everything that I was dealing with at the time. I quickly learned this tune before I was in the hospital called The Cat, which is a Jimmy Smith tune. It's like a boogaloo. It's really fun. So when I went to sit, it was Paul Bolenbeck on guitar and Carmen and Tori on drums. And I played The Cat, and I just remember feeling at home, if that makes sense. Like, it felt so good to be playing again, and it was a magical night, and I really appreciated him giving me that opportunity. And yeah, other times when I saw him, other times he would give me advice during the break or talk to me during the break and just, have fun. So yeah, he was a really, really great mentor.
He was greatly missed, and the outpouring of sadness when he passed by the entire jazz community around the world was really overwhelming. Um, and what a wonderful experience to have. I was just looking down your CDs, which we'll mention a little later on. Did you record the cat on any of them? On either?
I think the second CD that I made.
By the way, you had said with the Hammond organ that Dr. Lonnie Smith gave it to you. Was it his or was it a new one?
It was his.
You
Yeah.
got Dr. Lonnie Smith's own organ.
Yeah, and it's funny when you lift up the bench, you see you have to oil an organ periodically, and and underneath the bench there's a sheet, and it says like oil 1963, 1964. So it's cool to see that.
What a gift! That's incredible.
Yeah, and he didn't want money for it either. It was a gift. Of course, we paid the man from Rhode Island that delivered it, but yeah, I couldn't believe it when it came. I didn't think that he was serious because, I mean, that's a crazy question. Um, but yeah, I still have it to this day. Of course, I take care of it and play it every day.
And you were about 7 at the time, right?
No, this was, I believe, when I was 11. Yeah, like fifth grade.
All right.
Yeah.
Incredible. Now, I had noted that you have other influences and mentors, and Bob Belden, who introduced you to Herbie Hancock.
Yeah. So we went to Lincoln Center one night to see Herbie Hancock perform, and we went to the pre-concert lecture with Bob Belden to listen to him and see what he had to say because we always go to pre-lectures. And we were talking to him about my interest in jazz, and I love Herbie Hancock's playing. Uh, in fact, one of my favorite tunes to play is Driftin', which is on his first CD when he was 22, which blows my mind that, he was 22 writing all these great compositions. But after the concert, we met with Bob Belden again, and he said, "Let me see if I can get you to meet Herbie." And actually, it was very difficult because security didn't want to let us in, which makes sense. But he kept pushing and trying to get us in. And I remember it was a relatively small room with a lot of people in it. Actually, Esperanza Spalding was there. And so while we were waiting to talk to Herbie Hancock, she was giving us some advice. And I remember her telling me to put the time in when I'm young, because when you get older, there's so many obstacles that get in the way. And I really appreciated that advice because I do try to put in as much work as possible now. But when I met him, I remember him saying that we both had the same glasses. And he said I could sub for him one day because of the glasses. But he was so kind and he really took the time to talk to us. And Bob Belden, we kept in touch with. He would send me tons of recordings to listen to, and he shared some of his archives of different bootleg recordings that I still have and listen to. And he used to give me certain things to listen to, specific recordings that he thought I would enjoy. But yeah, it's strange. So many people have passed away since, like Bob Belden passed away. But I cherish everything that they've done for me.
Now, interestingly, when you were also 11, so aside from what you had mentioned before, you were featured in one of two pianists in an hour-long special, The Future of Jazz on WBGO. And then that same year, you recorded debut, which is your first CD. It sounds like a very busy year for you.
Yeah. And I don't know, do you want me to talk about debut a little
Please,
bit?
yeah.
So, yeah, I was 11 years old, and so I'm gonna give you a big backstory. There's a bass player named Tim Givens, who he was actually the first bass player I ever played with and continue to play with. Actually, he was a bass player yesterday. And when I was first learning, how to play piano, I know we're jumping back, but when I was around that 7 years old time period, my dad had him come over and record these at home records just for the fun of keeping a record of, I guess my progress and what I was doing. So Tim Givens has been a part of my life and musical journey ever since. We still play almost every gig together. And Tim Givens and this other woman, Cecilia Coleman, are very good friends with Rudy Van Gelder. And Rudy Van Gelder is one of the most famous jazz recording engineers in history. He worked for Blue Note Records and pretty much recorded everybody you can think of. He used to have a home studio, I think his parents' house, and then he switched to a studio in Inglewood Cliffs. So Tim Givens mentioned that I might want to record there. So we had to meet Rudy Van Gelder in order to get approval on recording there. If he didn't like us, it would not be possible. So we drove there, my dad, my mom, and I, and we met him, and he was so kind. I believe he was 88 at this time, or 89. And he was very, very friendly, which sometimes people talk about stories where he wasn't so friendly, but so I was a little bit intimidated because of that. But he was so friendly, and he had me test out two of the pianos. So there was one smaller piano that he said Ray Bryant loved to play on and Monk loved to play on this piano. And then there was a 9-foot piano in an isolation booth, and he said this is a piano that Herbie loves to play. So try them out and see, which one you like more. And I love the smaller piano, but something about a 9-foot like really gravitated me. That low bass sounded great. So he agreed to record us at Rudy Van Gelder's studio with Rudy Van Gelder. And we did the first half. We did 2 sessions. So the first session we did as trio. And then the second session was going to be with my singer, who's a vocalist. At the time, she was singing some jazz standards, but she now performs opera in Germany and all around New Jersey and New York. So between the first and second session, they invited us, Rudy Van Gelder and his assistant, Maureen Sickler, invited us to his 89th birthday party. And it was, invite only. There were many people there, but not overflowing. And it was interesting because they had food in the studio, which was a huge no-no in the past. Like there were tables of food all along the studio, and there were many different people there. Half the rhythm sections, Idle Moments, and Ron Carter, Steve Turre, Jerry Dodgian, all different people. And we met Jimmy Cobb and his wife, Elena T. Cobb, there. So we were talking to Elena T. Cobb, who we're still keep in touch with and are still very friendly with. And she asked Jimmy Cobb if he would be okay with playing some of the CD. We asked, of course, too, because that's crazy and you never know. And he agreed. So during the second recording session, Jimmy Cobb played with us, and that was half organ and half piano. So half the CD is my dad playing drums, and the other half is Jimmy Cobb playing drums. And it was just incredible. It's crazy how these things happen, because I would have never expected that. And we stayed in touch with Jimmy Cobb too, all these years. But it's still unbelievable to me that happened.
It is incredible. The vocalist that you mentioned before, who's now traveling in Germany, what is her name?
Oh yeah, that's my sister Natasha Scheuble.
And she sings not only jazz, but classical and opera, correct?
Yeah, so at the time she was in high school when we recorded this, and she was just starting to get into opera. Now she's full blown opera, and sometimes it's funny because I wish she sang like Ernestine Anderson, and she wishes I played classical, but we clash a little bit because of that. Uh, so instead, we'll play, compositions by Gershwin or Cole Porter together because the two styles fit. Um, and yeah, she's taken off with opera. She sings the Queen of the Night aria is really her specialty, which is one of the hardest, pieces of music to sing as a vocalist. So it's incredible. But we were trained two different ways. For her, my dad used to, from day one in the stroller, play ear training tapes for her. Like this is a perfect fifth, and this is a perfect third, or perfect fourth, whatever. And she started with violin lessons, um, pretty much her whole life up until the end of high school when she switched to being a vocalist. So she knows she has fantastic pitch. She can read anything. She can sing anything. Um, but yeah, so for me, where it was unorthodox, it was more traditional for her. So we have two different sides of music, but still connect very well.
We were blessed to have her perform here at the Wayne Public Library as well.
Oh, great.
So let's talk about something that I was thinking about is the fact of the song choice that you have. And I'm curious, who selects them? Do you select all of them? And your favorite song, which is on both your CDs, which is?
Moanin', Moanin' by Bobby Timmons. Yeah, that's a good question. So I picked a lot of repertoire from listening to music and enjoying favorite, I guess, selections from especially Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, like Dat Dare and Moanin'. And some things are more standards, what we call jazz standards, but some things aren't. For instance, one piece on, I believe the second record is Brother Can You Spare a Dime, which is a 1920s depression tune that a lot of people don't know. I believe Abby Lincoln recorded it though, but I learned it from Bing Crosby too. And yeah, I just kind of went through picking selections that I enjoyed listening to and also enjoyed playing. And the interesting thing is that sometimes, and you see this a lot with Billie Holiday, you'll play a tune for many years. For instance, Moan and I play on almost every gig as the last tune. And you notice different things, different creative ideas come from playing that song so many times. You start shaping it in a different way. And especially with my dad being the drummer that I work with the most, and Tim Givens, although I also work with Bill Crow. Uh, yeah, you shape the tunes as a collective trio in many different ways. And yeah, I guess also similar to Favela, it's just pieces that I love to hear.
The Charlie Parker song that you referenced before, could you remind me of the name of that?
Oh yeah, Oprah.
What an incredible song that is. And I actually got on a Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie kick recently with the Live at Massey Hall and listening to We and Perdido. And it's just all the things you are. I'm obsessed with this song, All the Things You Are, right now.
They say it's the perfect composition, just the way that the melody and the chords move, and the way that you can improvise over it with so many different ideas. Yeah, I also love All the Things You Are.
And I think another very perfect song is also Body and Soul, right?
Yeah, definitely. They're all timeless. I mean, there's so many different ways to approach them. That's what makes it so great.
So, the musicians that you work with, you mentioned Tim Givens, you're now performing with three generations in jazz, with him, your father, and then of you. And we'll talk about your upcoming performances shortly. But how did you hook up with Bill Cross?
So I met him a number of years ago. I believe at this place called the Faith Lutheran Church, which was a church in New Providence that had different jazz services. So they had a New Orleans service, and then they had the music of Duke Ellington and the music of Count Basie. And they'd always have incredible players come in, including Bill Crow. And then a few years passed where we played together at the Hyatt in New Brunswick. And then again, a few years passed. And a year before the pandemic, my dad started having these jam sessions at the house, at our house. These were also put on by a guitarist named Flip Peters, who also suggested it to us and still comes. And so we had these jam sessions, and during the pandemic, we started having them outside. And that was always Bill Crow coming over and Flip Peters. And sometimes I'd play piano or Tomoko Ono would play piano. And somehow these sessions turned into a weekly thing that still go on today, 3 years later. And it's every week we meet. There's almost a waiting list for musicians who want to come by because it's 25% playing and 75% of stories from Bill Crow. And Bill Crow, like I said, just turned 95. But he has such an incredible career playing with Zoot Sims, Stan Getz. He played with Duke Ellington, the Benny Goodman tour of the Soviet Union in the 60s. He hung out with Charlie Parker and knew just about everybody. Played opposite of Max Roach and Clifford Brown. So the firsthand stories that Bill Crow tells us are just so unbelievable. And the way that he plays it's of a certain era, but it's incredible. He has such a drive and he uses a lot of counterpoint, like different lines that are just fantastic. And so these sessions have been every week. And since then, we've been performing a lot together. And that's why it's the 3 generations of jazz, because he's 95. My dad is like a generation younger, and I'm a generation younger than that. And actually, a bassist named Neil Miner just made a documentary on Bill Crow and premiered it, I believe this month or last month, but it's on YouTube, called Jazz Journeyman. And I was asked to be in part of it as well. But it's just great to have all these influences and mentors. And he's actually coming over tomorrow, so it's nice.
Your sessions remind me of the ones that Emmett Cohen started at his walk up during the pandemic, and there's a waiting list for that too. And I'm not sure who it was that said that the amazing thing is all these musicians are willing to walk up. It's like a 4th floor, 1-bedroom, walk up with no elevator, and they're dragging all their instruments up there. So
I know, it's like, you don't get paid obviously, but people are driving from upstate New York to come to the sessions. And it's interesting because the way that we have it sometimes is that Tomoko Ono plays piano and I play Hammond organ. And then sometimes like different guitarists, different horn players. We once had a xylophone player come in and join us. So it's really an interesting thing, and we have a lot of fun with it too.
I see that you're going to be performing with Tomoko Ono soon as a two keyboards.
Yeah, I believe that's June 14th. I know it's in June, but yeah, we've never performed piano and organ together, so we're really excited to try that out at Shanghai Jazz Restaurant in Madison.
Where you performed last night.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. It's a great place with Bill Crow. So
It's a small place, so I'm curious to know where they're going to get 2 pianos and how they're going to fit them in there.
I agree. I guess we'll find out.
It's like with Bill Charlap and Reedy Rossins playing together with their 2 pianos, and they were at the Jazz Forum. I was kind of curious how they were going to fit the 2 pianos in there.
I saw that. It was incredible. But yeah, I think I'll be playing Hammond, a keyboard. So it's a little bit smaller than a piano, which is good. Because I don't think you could fit 2 pianos in that room. But yeah, I'm very excited to see how that goes, and I'm very excited to play with her.
This is a nice segue to talk about something that I'm also very passionate about is the opportunities and the um, having the ability for more women to be playing in jazz. It's always been a male dominant uh, music area, and more now we are seeing women playing, and you're one of them. And one of the things I was fortunate to talk about a little bit with Rini Rosses when I had my conversation with her. We talked about the different instruments that women tend to gravitate towards, and many do gravitate towards piano. Tomoko Ono, yourself included, and she has her band Artemis, who I got to see perform last year at the Montclair Jazz Festival, which was fantastic. But do you see more opportunities being or doors opening for women in jazz?
Yes, absolutely. Uh, I was thinking about it. It seems like there's more jazz female instrumentalists now than there have been in the past. Of course, there were many, and of course many vocalists as well. But I'm really happy to see more women gravitating toward different instruments, piano. See Bria Skomberg playing trumpet, and different people that are now making their way into the scene. And I feel like it's just going to keep going up from here. Uh, Personally, myself, I haven't had a bad experience. I've always been very supportive or supported by many men in jazz who want to elevate all of us up as well. And I'm very happy about that they've been there to support women in jazz. Just personally, that's the way that I've had experiences. But yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, it's just gonna keep going up from here. And I hope that we can get more women involved as well.
I want to talk about your composition, and your composition that comes to mind is 2:52 a.m., correct? That's the name of it. And you mentioned you were a nighttime person. So obviously, I think it's relevant to that time frame. How did that come about?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I've composed a couple of different pieces, and most of them are bluesy, or I also wrote a samba as well that I was gonna perform but ran out of time. And with 2:52 a.m., I was up at 2 o'clock in the morning, just kind of playing around with different ideas. And that particular composition is it's in six, but it's kind of in 3/4. And I was working on just messing around with different time signatures, specifically with that bass line that I wrote. And I was messing around with it in three, and then in five, and in four. And I really liked the way that it felt in three. And immediately a melody kind of came to mind, which was that melody. But the bridge section, I was stumped on. I had no idea what to do for the bridge. So I kind of put it away and left it alone for, I don't know, a couple months. And then my dad helped me. He gave me some ideas, and we kind of came up with some of those ideas for the bridge together. And then I messed with it some more and came up with the whole composition. So yeah, it's really fun. And then at school, we got an assignment to write for three trombones. So, and a rhythm section. So I took 2:52 a.m. and I arranged it for the trombones, and I'm hoping to arrange it a bit more, maybe with a big band one day. Uh, but yeah, it's really fun to play, and I'm glad I wrote it. And yeah, it seems like some of my compositions have bizarre forms in a way, like an extra bar at the end, or something like that. But I try to write in a way where it sounds correct, almost as if it didn't have that, it would have sounded wrong. um, but yeah, I always feel like I do the best things at night, so that's why I'm not a morning person. Yeah.
I'm always drawn to unusual time signatures. I hear them. I can't count them, which is unfortunate, but I'm drawn to them and I know something's off and I love it. And and also I'm a big fan of waltz. So that 3/4 time, it just really grabbed me, and it's an incredible song. And it sounds like it's been around forever. That's an incredible thing. Uh, Is it Lawrence Hopgood, the pianist? Lawrence Hopgood performed here last year, and he did Straighten Up and Fly Right in 7/8 time, and it's incredible to listen to. It's on his album, and yeah, there's just I'm always drawn to 5/4, anything that's an unusual signature. So I encourage you to continue with that.
Yeah, I mean, I heard if you feel a little bit uncomfortable in either a certain key or a certain time signature or whatever, that the best thing to do is to write your own composition because you digest it in a different way. Uh, but I'm hoping to very soon do another album, and I hope to put that on there and a couple other originals as well.
Your samba, yes? Do you have a name for your samba?
I do. It's O Samba de Saudade. Saudade. It's like a Brazilian Portuguese word for longing or missing somebody. I have to learn how to pronounce it better though. but but yeah.
I look forward to that album. I can't wait to hear it.
Oh, thank you.
One of the other things I would like to talk to you about is the difference in playing an acoustic piano versus the Hammond organ, because they have a different touch, a different feel, but also is there a different mindset that you need to get into when you're playing each of those instruments?
Yeah, that's interesting. Uh, to me, I find them to be completely different. Although the keyboard is the same, it's almost like a piano versus a harpsichord. I mean, it's a completely different approach. And the Hammond has a very, very light touch, which is why you can get a lot of like repetitive notes or do more rhythmic things like wrist slaps and different fun ways of messing with the different sounds. And of course, having the bass lines, you can comp for yourself, but you typically don't. You walk bass lines and play stuff on the upper manual. And for the bass pedals, there's two different ways of playing them. So, I mean, there's more, but the two common thoughts are walking the bass line with your feet, which is usually used in a lot of ballads, or if somebody is fantastic with their feet, they'll do that. But unfortunately, you only have to use one foot because the right foot is for the volume pedal. So it's basically how much you can use with your left foot. And another thing that you do is you tap on a note, either on one note or following your left hand bass line. So if, like, let's say this is your foot, you would follow it kind of in parallel motion, but you're just tapping. So you're not actually hearing the note, but it's more percussive, almost as like a bass player would pluck a string. You're trying to get that percussive aspect to your bass line in your left hand. So that's very different from the piano already. Uh, but there's so many different sounds, and you do have a volume pedal, so you don't necessarily have to control the volume with your hands as you would on the piano. Uh, but again, because of the light touch, you can do so many different things, and it's really so fun. I almost feel like two different people when I play piano versus organ, because there's even a vocal aspect to the organ, like, playing deep, almost like the Temptations in a way, like having the different registers or screaming at the top. And they use a lot of these different vocal effects in gospel music, especially while following the pastor. So yeah, it's completely different to me, even though it's the same keyboard kind of shape. Yeah, I'd say I feel like two different people.
I can understand that. And like even just an electric piano, we had a Wurlitzer growing up, and the touch and feel of that was so very, very different from the acoustic piano that um, it was an adjustment to make. And now with an organ where you're adding in a third appendage, if you will, and coordinating all this, I find it amazing that it is a lot of coordination.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so fun though. But also, I've had my experience now moving a Hammond organ, and it's over 300 pounds. So you use different dollies and different ways of moving it, but it's just a completely different monster, if you will, in a way.
Is it so the Hammond organ, is that a different organ than the Hammond B3 organ?
No, so Hammond is a company that made all these organs to kind of take the place of church organs, I believe, in the beginning. I actually think the first one was made in the 1930s, or roughly around there. And there's three different models that people play. They play the Hammond A100, the Hammond B3, and the Hammond C3. And the A100 and C3 have a built-in like cabinet, like speaker cabinet in the bottom, where the B3 is empty on the bottom of the organ. And the organ that Dr. Lonnie Smith gave me is an A100. People say B3 because it sounds cool, but actually at Rudy Van Gelder's studio, all these records say like Jimmy Smith on the B3 or Don Patterson on the B3 and all this stuff. In his studio, it's a C3, so it's not actually a B3. But they're all pretty much the same in sound. It just sounds cool to say B3, but yeah.
Have you ever been influenced by the rock organist Steve Winwood?
Yeah, well, I know his name very well, but I haven't listened to him enough. But I know that there were so many organists, like Green Onions had an organ on it that I heard growing up. Um,
Booker T and the MGs, yeah.
yeah, and I don't know. I feel like they should bring it back in popular music because it's such an interesting instrument and it can be used in so many different ways. But
It is 300 pounds, as you pointed out.
yeah, exactly. We just have to have organs all over the place now. Maybe organ donors. I don't know.
It gives a whole new level of what an organ donor could be, right?
Yeah, sometimes they do catch on fire though. I have a fire extinguisher next to mine just in case. There's all different crazy things that can happen. So it's good to take care of the organ health, you know.
Oh my goodness, that's very funny. So I just want to talk about some of your accolades and then start talking about your being at William Patterson. So just going back in time a little bit here, you had recorded your two albums in 2013 and 2016, excuse me. In 2015, you were named the best up and coming young artist by the Hot House New York City Fans Decision Awards. And in May 2016, you gave a TEDx talk at an Eastern Pennsylvania event and a second talk that was later filmed and it was for PBS and can be seen online. I find fascinating. It was incredible how poised and well spoken you are in this TEDx talk. And I love the points that you made. And to summarize, if you allow me, the points you made that people need to apply to their lives, and I think this goes in all aspects, is to take a risk, persevere with your gifts and talents, overcome your boundaries, and bring out your inner child. How old were you when you did that?
I believe I was 14 at the
That's
time.
incredible. You are an old soul.
That whole process was so interesting to me because uh, the TEDx was through Johnson and Johnson, which is where my mom works on medical devices, and you had to first give a proposal of what you wanted to speak about, and then you get selected, and then you go through a process of where they hear your speech and decide to keep you. And then past that, they had us meet with an acting coach actually. And what his kind of master class was about was storytelling. And he went through three different ways of storytelling. One, talking as we are face to face and telling a story. Two, turning your back and only telling the story with your voice. And three, not using your voice, but only telling the story with your hands. And then putting them all together. And I found that masterclass to be very, very interesting. Also, how to paint a picture of a scenario and different ways that you want to portray what you're talking about in your story as well. And the reason that I wanted to give that TED talk was because I feel like as people get older, you start putting up boundaries. I'll use music as an example. Sometimes you'll hear adults say, "Oh, I love Chopin, but I'll never be able to play that," or I love Oscar Peterson or Bud Powell, but I'll never be able to do that. So they just put up the walls for themselves. But when you're a child, you don't think, I'm learning addition 2 plus 2. I'll never be able to do calculus, or I'll never be able to do rocket science. You never hear that. You just do the homework assignment and then it gradually builds up. So I feel like another thing is that children often are very curious and they want to try things and take risks. And, we get older and we go into routines and we kind of get stuck in those routines. So I feel like people of any age should feel the freedom to explore and to take away those. I'll never be able to do that. Like, I can't do addition, I can't build a rocket. It's crazy to think that way, but we do. So I was happy to try to put that message out there to just take the risks and take it one step at a time instead of overwhelming yourself if you truly love it.
It's a very important message, and there's something about our society that puts limitations on us, I think, as we get older, as well as our individual limitations we put on. I don't have time, I'm too tired, I have to work, and you're right. If you have a passion and you can pursue it, you can move mountains sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to touch on some of your other accolades as we're going chronologically through your time, and then we'll get to your William Patterson days here. So in 2017, you performed for the Highlights in Jazz series at, excuse me, at Tribeca Pack, winning the New Jersey Governor's Award for Exceptional Promise in Music and performing for the New Jersey Jazz Society's 45th Anniversary Gala. You were also awarded the Youth in Action Award from the International Women in Jazz for the second time and had the honor to be selected by Carnegie Hall Wheel Music Institute as an alternate musician for their 2018 NYO Jazz Session. And more recently, you've developed into a jazz lecturer and a featured artist at several high-profile jazz festivals, including the Jazz Forum Festival in 2021 and the Jazz Arts Project Summer Festival. Now, many of the venues you're playing at are all the sought after and important venues in New Jersey and also into New York. Shanghai Jazz in Madison, Dizzy's Coca-Cola Club, Clemens Place and Jazz Forum in Tarrytown. You've made such a name for yourself, and your trajectory is only going up higher and higher. It's incredible to watch your career grow.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate that.
You're now in your third year at William Patterson's undergraduate program. Did you choose William Patterson because your father attended there, or were there other reasons?
Yeah, so my senior year of high school is when the pandemic hit. And besides that being such a major factor in where I chose to go to college, William Patterson was always my top choice because of the root that it had in the tradition and the people that have come out of there, the people that have run it, like Thad Jones, which would be his 100th year, like centennial birthday, I guess, in 2023. And I believe the program is also celebrating 50 years this year as well. And so I loved the tradition in swing and bebop and hard bop and getting those foundations completely covered. And during this time, Harold Mayburn was the piano teacher there, and he was a huge idol of mine. So as I was exploring different colleges, I went to the school to. They have these things called music major for a day, where you can sit in on classes and ensembles. And Bill Charlap is the musical director there. So I remember seeing one of his ensembles and playing for him, and then talking to Harold Mayburn. And we went into a room where there was 2 pianos, and we played this one very obscure Clifford Brown tune called George's Dilemma. And then we played Dat Dare, the Bobby Timmons tune, together. And I was so set on studying with him, and that year he passed away. So I was very kind of worried in a way. The pandemic was also hitting at this point. But I had gotten accepted, and Mike Ladon, a great organist and pianist, came in to fill his seat. And I was a little bit worried about that too, because um, he he tells it like it is, which I think is great. But I was a little bit worried about meeting him and studying with him. So I decided to study at William Patterson. I commute because it's close enough. And Michael Dunn has become my teacher at William Patterson. And just last year, they got a Hammond C3 at the school. So we have organ ensembles and organ lessons and piano lessons, and I truly love it there. And Bill Charlap, although he doesn't give lessons, I've had many ensembles with him, and he's a great inspiration as well. And so I'm so happy that I picked William Patterson. And yeah, I didn't pick it because my dad was there necessarily, but just what they have to offer is so great. And it's interesting how people from New Jersey see it as a state school, but it's actually one of the best jazz programs in not only in the country, I think in the world. And there's so many people from I have friends from Iceland, Chile, South Korea, Argentina that all come to study only because of William Patterson, and then people across the country as well. So it's so diverse, and I really love that about it too.
It's an incredible program, and a lot of the genesis of this virtual series was because we're in Wayne and they're in Wayne, it was a national shoe-in, and we've been very fortunate actually to be able to now have the student ensembles perform here at the library. So last November we had one of the ensembles, and then on May 2nd we have Pete McGinnis's Jazz Arrangers Ensemble performing. It's on May 2nd at 7 o'clock. I noticed that you will be playing at Disney's Coca-Cola Club on March 28th. It's part of the William Patterson Thad Jones Ensemble. Are you then at the Thad at 100, Thad Jones's 100th birthday celebration on April 2nd then at William Patterson?
I'm not sure about April 2nd, but yeah, that's actually Tuesday coming up, March 28th. And that'll be great. It'll be the big band playing the music of Thad Jones, and then the small group playing the music of Thad Jones as well. And it's great because in the archives that they have on campus, they have handwritten music from just about everybody. They have like Miles Davis's trumpet and charts, and they have charts from Harold Mayburn and all different people, Michael Brecker, Cedar Walton, just everybody you can think of. And of course, Thad Jones, because he began the program. So I'm really excited about that concert, and I love all the selections too.
Thank you for bringing up about the archives. The one of the first of the interviews that I did with this program was with David Dempsey, where we spoke about the archives, and he took us on a little tour of them, and it was a fantastic interview that is also available on our YouTube page, and it was highly enjoyable to do with him.
Yeah, it's great. It's such a hidden gem, and I love Dr. Dempsey as well. He's so great.
I wanted to also mention that earlier this year you participated in Madison as part of a 90-minute program on the importance of women in jazz that was at the New Jersey Jazz Society's Jersey Jazz Live program on March 5th. And that was at the Madison Community Arts Center. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was great. So there's a film maker and director named Jim Burns, and a man named Chuck Granata, who is a fantastic historian and author. He has many books on Frank Sinatra. And with Chuck Granata, I met him at, what was it called? I'm forgetting the name of it, but in October, the New Jersey Jazz Society, I think it was the 50th year celebration actually. The New Jersey Jazz Society had a big concert, and they were celebrating Bill Crow, and Chuck Granata was talking about different, historical events, and we connected afterwards and became good friends. So he started coming to the jam sessions at the house with Bill Crow, and he comes and hangs out and asks questions, and it's really great. And he brought along Jim Burns, who makes documentaries and different things. So they approached me about being a part of their Women in Jazz concert, which was in March 5th. And it was great. They showed different documentaries and asked me about being a woman in jazz and being honored to represent women in jazz as well. And it was really a great event. I was honored to be a part of it.
That's fantastic, and you deserve to be a part of it. You're our future and a great spokeswoman for all women in jazz.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm so honored to be a part of this community and to represent.
So I wanted to talk about some of your upcoming performances that I have from your website. If you stay tuned in at the end of this interview, we'll have that information to share, as well as the two CDs that she has put out. And the second is available to check out at the library. Check out and check out from the library. So on April 5th, you're going to be performing with Leonike's Three Generations of Jazz Quintet. And that's with Valerie Ponomarev. Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Jerry Weldon, Nick Scheuble, and Bill Crow, and yourself. And that's going to be fantastic. And then you will have at Shanghai Jazz in June 14th, the organ piano quartet that you had mentioned previously with Tomoko Ono, Chuggy Carter, and Nick Scheuble.
Yeah. I just want to quickly mention about Clement's Place. We are a quintet, and Jerry Weldon and Valery Ponomarev are legends in of themselves, and Bill Crow, of course, as well. And it's a quintet. We're going to be playing the music of all the great jazz quintets, like Clifford Brown and Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. And Valery Ponomarev was a jazz messenger. And he has a book all about his time being with Art Blakey and coming. He's from Russia and he came to America, and it's a fantastic book. I think he just put out another book as well. But altogether, the stories that they can tell you are just it's an opportunity that you have once in a lifetime to hear. And I'm very, very excited to be presenting that quintet and playing the music of Art Blakey with a member of Art Blakey's band.
Oh, I hope I can make it. It just sounds incredible. And then you also have in June 25th that you and Bill Crow will be at the Jazz Forum in Tarrytown.
Yeah, they just recently got a Hammond organ a few months ago. So I'm very, very excited to be playing there. I had the great honor of recently being named a Hammond artist. So I'm so excited to play there on their Hammond. I believe that's an A100, but I'm not sure.
That's really exciting. It's wonderful that the jazz clubs are responding to the need for having the instrument, so you can play and others can play it.
Yeah, and there's nothing like a real instrument. So I'm so excited.
And the last gig that I see that you have on your website is in July 13th at the Carney Library, Cubana B, Cubana Bob, which I think is a fantastic name.
Yeah, it's my dad put together a Latin band while he was at William Patterson, and in that group, they have Tito Puente's bass player, Michael Vinyas, and Emma Dean Rivera, and so many great musicians. Like I said, it's a 7-piece Latin group, and almost always people can't sit still. I mean, I just love playing that music, so I'm very excited to play that.
Well, I can't thank you enough for joining me tonight and sharing your stories and sharing your talents. And I am really excited to see where your career goes. And I very much enjoyed just chatting with you. So thank you for taking your time.
Oh, thank you so much. It was really, really an honor to be a part of this and to speak with you. And this was so much fun. So thank you so much for having me and for having me be a part of this.